Ja nie jestem znanym reżyserem ani scenarzystą, reżyserką, scenarzystką, czy też nawet słynną malarką. Wy nie jesteście profesjonalnymi animatorami, nikt z nas tutaj nie ma doświadczenia przy wielkiej produkcji. Nie jesteśmy w centrum przemysłu filmowego, w jakimś wielkim hollywoodzkim studiu z mega budżetem, nie jesteśmy nawet w centrum polskiego przemysłu filmowego, tylko tak raczej na peryferiach. To powiedzmy, że to wszystko prawda, ale jednak tak gdzieś coś tkwi w naszych sercach, co sprawia, że ja wierzę, że jesteśmy w stanie zrobić coś, na co nikt, nawet ci z tego wielkiego przemysłu filmowego się nie porwali. Będziemy w stanie pokazać na ekranach kin, co Vincent i co ta grupa dziwaków z Moreny nosi w swoim sercu. Dziękuję.
I was brought up in Bytom, which is in the south of Poland. It's a region called Silesia. It's a mining district. And I was brought up by my grandmother in communism. And when I was around 14, I wanted to sign up to the theater club. And I went there to sign up to the theater club, and the tutor, she was sick. They offered me to sign up to the painting club. So I did that, and I met people there that I really liked, and I actually discovered that I really like painting and drawing, and this is how it all started, and that's how I got into the art high school. We had like this very close group of friends.
We had also a lot of luck when it came to our professors. Our art history teacher enabled us to have our first proper and tangible meeting with important basics of art.
She used to take us for excursions, and during school time and also on holidays we used to go together to see museums all over Europe.
Where, amongst others, we learned about Vincent van Gogh.
After high school, some of us stayed with and carry on the same education, went to Fine Arts Academy.
Dorota, as long as I can remember, always wanted to take on directing. I think her love for it came from her grandfather. Because whenever she visited her family home in Bytom, they would go to cinema together and later had a discussion about film classics.
One of my best friends, Kamil, he went to film school and he came back always with amazing stories, and on some point he got me involved with his films and his projects, which for me it was just incredible. It was kind of like a back door to film school. Kamil invited me to work on his film Świteś. With Świteś I was working on art, concept art, on animatic, on animation, on texturing in 3D, so all sorts of things. After a few months, all of a sudden, all the works on Świteś were stopped. Kamil just disappeared. I was alone in the city that I didn't know anyone, and I didn't have much to do because I went there just to work on Cameron's film. And when he disappeared, I decided just to wait around and wait for him. So I started painting, and all of a sudden he did come back, and he met with me, and then I realized we have to take a break from Świteś. He needed a break, and he just invited me to, instead of waiting around for the other people's project, to start my own project. And I think that was really good advice, and I took it, and I started working on my own idea. But on the other hand, I really missed painting, and I felt that would be amazing to actually combine these things. And I think it took me around 2 weeks maybe to decide what I'm gonna do, and that I'm gonna paint a film. And at first, that is all I knew, that I wanted to do a painting animation, and it would be a 7-minute short film that I would paint entirely by myself. I was thinking about bringing my own paintings to life. I was thinking about telling a fictional story in the style of a famous painter. And then I was also wondering whether I could actually bring a famous artist's paintings to life to tell their own story. And as soon as I had thought that, then I knew I would make a film about Vincent van Gogh. I vividly remember as a teenager at art school being overwhelmed by both Vincent's work and also by the tragic sadness of his short life. And I think that the fact that he started painting at 29 after having failed at several professions meant that I identified with him even more, as that was the exact age I was when I was coming up with the idea for the film. Vincent's bravery in starting over at 29, in throwing himself into a profession he had no training in believing that he could make art that would touch people, help them even, was inspiring. So I decided that I wanted to tell his story and tell it through his own paintings. You don't get artists who paint so much and so personally. He painted the world around him, his room, his shoes, the food he ate, the friends he spoke to. So that's why it had to be Vincent. I had to wait for 3 months to get the production started and get the money, and so I had this 3 months, and then someone in which he recommended me in Breakthrough to Hugh. So I thought that's amazing opportunity, and I went to Łódź to work on the project.
I've been working in film and animation for 20 years. I started off going to film school. After I left film school, I set up my company Breakthrough Films 17 years ago. Before loving Vincent, I was best known for producing a film called Peter and the Wolf, which I won an Oscar for in 2008. And after that, I had another fairly big production, which was The Magic Piano. And because of that project, I crossed paths with a very talented woman called Dorota Kobiela.
Breakthrough, they were looking for concept artists and someone for animatic.
A very unintended consequence of hiring her was that we almost instantly fell in love.
Hugh fell in love not only with me, but also with my project.
You know, it's not often that you feel that you see something that's very fresh, that's very new, that's very exciting. At first, it wasn't because of Vincent van Gogh, because I didn't really know that much about him at the beginning. And then, you know, as I started reading the books that we had lying about our flat, I became more fascinated. And I was shocked when I found out that Vincent had only started painting at 29 after failing at 4 other careers. I'd always assumed he'd been a gifted artist from a young age like other geniuses, yet Vincent's first encounter with art was when he joined his uncle's art dealership. And despite working very hard there and despite his family connections, he was sacked because of his inability to deal with customers. He subsequently tried to be a teacher, and then a bookstore clerk, and finally he tried to be a preacher like his father, but was thrown out of his own church for being overly religious. This ended him up in a barn in a desperately poor mining region in Belgium, subsisting only off bread and doing nothing but reading books. And at that low point, he decided to gamble everything on becoming an artist, and with the support of his brother, who was financing him and believed in him to do this, he threw himself entirely into becoming an artist. And I think his extraordinary passion and emotion was really what got me hooked on loving Vincent.
So it's fair to say that Hugh definitely became interested in Vincent's life later on. But at first it wasn't until our third day that we talked about my project properly.
In a bar called Kaliska in Łódź, through a night of tequilas, Dorota told me 6 different stories in terms of the directions that Loving Vincent could go into. And this was at the stage when it was still a short film. But even then, you know, I think what we were both most fascinated by was Vincent's final days, you know, how Vincent was in his final days.
What was going through his mind? Because by this point, Vincent was beginning to have some success.
And things seemed to be going well for him for the first time in his adult life almost. And yet this was the time that he killed himself. And that mystery really hooked us. So, I mean, we'd had a few discussions about the possibility of making it into a feature film.
I thought it was a crazy idea. Unlike Hugh, I'm a painter and an animator, and so I knew how much work it would be to make a painting animation feature. It would take an entire lifetime to paint.
We knew that it was a very big undertaking. I mean, to go from doing a 7-minute film that's fully painted by hand to doing a 80, 90-minute film that's fully painted was a huge change, requiring a totally different outlook. For me, anyway, the final straw in terms of going, okay, let's do it, let's make a feature film, was when I visited an exhibition in London about his letters. And there was a queue for 3.5 hours to get into this exhibition. I thought, if people will queue up for 3.5 hours, this man is so popular that it has to be a feature film. We have to give it the opportunity for as many people to see it as possible. So I went back to Dorota and I said, look, you know, whatever it takes, we have to take the leap and make this as a feature film. While we were doing Magic Piano, we were traveling around the world quite a lot.
It was great. I was taking it all in, painting, sketching, visiting museums. But then we stopped traveling, and I was faced with the reality of having to turn my 7-minute script into an 80-minute script. I was confident about how I wanted the film to look and about how we would animate the film, but writing the script, that was scary. I didn't know how to start. I felt lost. So I went through a period of binge watching films and thinking about and analyzing their story structure. After that, I ordered every recommended scriptwriting book I could, and I started reading. This gave me enough inspiration and enough tools, and soon I was so absorbed by the story that I forgot about my fears, and we began shaping the script.
One of the things that I struggled with was exactly how would this look, you know, and what kind of feeling would it give to audiences. And Dorota would go, oh, well, it's going to look like this, it's going to look like that. And you know, we got to a point where I thought, let's stop talking about it, let's just do a test, you know. And that's when we came up with the idea of the concept trailer. With the concept trailer, we shot it with our friends instead of actors. We shot it with white bed sheets instead of like green screens. So we found these 4 oil painters who we were going to try and train for the concept trailer to be painting animators, and essentially they were our guinea pigs.
I worked on the first trailer, but because I couldn't move to the free city, I painted from home in Warsaw. And the first animated Armand Roulin that appears on the trailer was done here in my flat.
Hugh brought a couple of people over from Breakthrough and we had our team assembled, ready to start production on the trailer.
Other than the material for the trailer, we also shot some material for tests. We drove down to a barn in extremely cold weather.
We dressed up just to see what it would look like and how it will be to animate more dynamic scenes, including one where I was a young boy in a cowboy suit who could be Vincent's potential killer.
If we could train those painters to become painting animators during the time scale of the concept trailer, then we knew it was something we could replicate on a bigger scale.
8 years, 860 paintings, 1,026 drawings, 800 letters, 20 people telling the story of one man.
He worked till late, got up before 6. He was happy here. He was.
Everybody rejected him.
Until he started hanging around with the gashades.
On the wall, he wrote a message in his own blood. You know what he writes? I'm the Holy Spirit.
Well, the truth is, we cannot speak other than by our paintings, with a handshake. Your loving Vincent.
When we got to the end of that process, how I felt about it was that I hadn't really seen anything like it before. I was very excited. I was very keen to show it to people, and you know, two of the first people I showed it to was Sean Bobbitt, who then immediately came on board as a shareholder in Breakthrough and also as a producer on the film.
He came to me and he showed me a trailer for the next film that he was planning on doing, Loving Vincent, and I immediately fell in love with it. I mean, it was like nothing I'd ever seen before, and I just said, yes, I definitely want to be a part of this.
And the other person I showed it to who had exactly the same reaction was Ivan McTaggart from Trademark Films.
It's an animation about Vincent van Gogh. And I said, well, let me stop you there, because we don't do animation. And he said, just watch this 90-second concept trailer that we've made. And he pulled out his iPad and he set it going. And I watched, transfixed for 90 seconds. And at the end of it said, okay, now we do animation, where do we sign?
And then, you know, as things progressed, we needed to have a serious kind of base for the film. We then moved to Gdansk and we moved to GPNT Business Center, and we had this huge empty space, 2,000 square meters, and there was 5 of us rattling around in this enormous space. So we had a badminton court, we had our rollerblades, and yeah, we were going to not only fill all of that space in time, but we'd need to have much more.
While we were making the concept trailer, it was taking us at least 2 hours to paint a single frame. We knew we had to find a way to cut the time in order to make it efficient enough to create a whole film in the same way.
Our first workstation for painters was very homemade. An easel, a camera, projector, IKEA shelving unit, a tripod, cheap computer and a memory stick. My job was to come up with something better to help animators to be able to animate more efficiently. So we came up with painting animation workstation. In addition, paths could minimize the amount of things that could go wrong during the animation.
So I think at the very beginning, Piotr was doing 3 hours a frame on our first setup. And, you know, by the time we got him into our painting animation workstation, our paths version 3.0, we had cut it in half to 1.5 hours.
It took us 5 days to assemble the first 30 painting animation workstations, and after that we were ready for the first painter's tests.
We went through a very careful process of selecting the right paint. We compared a number of major brands and pay attention to the quality of the paint, the differences in color, but also affordability. And in the end, the best option ended up being Van Gogh.
With painting animation workstations set up and paints chosen, the only thing missing was to have enough good painting animators.
In the case of Loving Vincent, there weren't painting animators, or there certainly weren't enough painting animators that were out there in the whole world to come and work on this film. So we had to create a workforce from scratch. We had to take brilliant painters and convert them into painting animators.
We had more than 1,000 portfolios submitted just from Polish artists. We ran 3-day tests in 3 cities in Poland, just for more than 300 of them. From these, we selected 60 for training, of whom 40 joined the film.
I had a 3-day test in Łódź, after which I waited for a call from Breakthrough. Then, after some time, we brought back to Gdańsk, where we went through a 6-week training course.
After the training, those who were accepted were invited to start a design process for the film.
We did 157 design paintings in total. These were crucial for precisely defining the look of the film. The animators all had to follow the colors, the style of the brushstrokes, and the feel of the design paintings. Without them, it wouldn't have been possible to keep the painting animation consistent. While we were designing the look of the film, we also had to start animation tests, but we needed to have material for the painters to test on. We decided to dress up as the characters from the paintings. It was great fun. We just rented the costumes. I dressed up as Marguerite Cachet, Hugh dressed up as a postman.
My friend wouldn't kill himself.
Together we got funds from Kickstarter and from the unemployment agency that allowed us to put together a training program for painting animators.
Hello Kickstarter, I'm Hugh Welshman. I'd like to show you something. Follow me. I think the first 65 people who went through were funded out by those 2 entities.
The 30 painters that you see here, thanks to you, started training this morning, and over the course of the next 3 months we'll be able to train about 50 painters with the monies that we've raised on Kickstarter.
Then we needed money not just for training but for the whole film, and as we're a Polish project, having the backing of the Polish Film Institute was a crucial step. If you don't have the backing of your national film institution, then international investors are wary and less likely to have confidence in your project.
We applied for Loving Vincent as a feature film.
We really had a struggle with peace. I think we were turned down 2 or 3 times.
And then you get to go and see the commission and discuss with them why and get to know about it. So I went there. I remember the situation was emotionally disturbing and painful, because I had sit in front of 4 people and they were all telling me that this is, first of all, boring, second of all, I do not have experience and I'm not a proper director. But of course, after some time, they proved to be a really big supporter of the project, and without them, it would have been nearly impossible to get the project going. But it took some convincing and determination at first. And as I was walking away from the institute, I was so emotionally destroyed. And I was thinking maybe they're right, but on some point I thought, no, I can't let them beat me down. You know, that's what Vincent did. He really had this persistence, and I should follow him if I really truly believe in it. And that's what kept me motivated.
We were at a pretty critical point in the production. Basically, we had to either raise some money relatively quickly, or we had to stop production, or at least put production on hold. And at that point, a friend of mine came to me and said, you know, Wrocław is the European Capital of Culture in 2016. Maybe they would like to, support the production as part of the European Capital of Culture. So I went to Wrocław. I met with the president of the city. I showed him what we were trying to do, and he said, well, as a city, we would like to support this production. And, it was a really important moment for the film. We started looking around for, work that we could do in Wrocław. We partnered up with CETA, which is Centrum Technologii Audiowizualnych. They have a beautiful facility for shooting on the blue screen. And they also had VFX facilities, so they could take on part of the work with VFX, and we could also do the Polish shoot at their facilities.
Rzecz wyglądała tak, że dostałem SMS-a a propos mojego angielskiego, więc odpisałem, że z nim nie jest najlepiej. Owszem, dogadam się, ale na robotę w języku to za mało. Sprawa ucichła na około 3 tygodnie do miesiąca. No i później telefon z agencji, że jednak producent zobaczył moje zdjęcia i bardzo się spodobałem, czy mogę przyjechać na rozmowę następnego dnia. Więc pojechałem, pogadaliśmy chwilę. I tak zostałem Van Gogiem.
And it was a really important time for us because it allowed us, before we had finalized with the Polish Film Institute, it allowed us to get the funding, which meant that we could shoot the first shots from the film. And for example, the famous shot that's on the poster of Vincent turning around, that was actually shot right after we closed the financing with the city of Wrocław. It was actually just a test shot, both for Robert Gulaczyk, the actor, and for Anya Kluza, and it turned out to be the most iconic shot of the film, I think.
One of our main challenges in bringing Vincent's painting to the cinema screen was the fact that Vincent used many different canvas sizes, and that was part of his choice as an artist in terms of the composition, whereas for cinema we could only use one size. This meant that we had to add or subtract or cover the painting through some kind of movement. And in the beginning, we did the whole film 16:9, which is the standard HD format. And it was causing us a lot of problems because actually most of Vincent's paintings was a size 30 canvas, and which is more a square format. So for every single painting almost, we were having to invent these sidebars and change the kind of the composition. And then Łukasz, our cinematographer, came along to us and he said, well, why don't you just shoot at Academy and then you don't have to, second guess the genius of Vincent van Gogh. And we were sacked by our first sales agent company because we made the decision to go with the Academy format. But, I would rather go against the sales agent than go against, the compositional choices of Vincent van Gogh.
We started working with Łukasz. We invited him to our studio to go through it step by step, shot by shot.
That's when we had to have the very detailed conversations of actually how we were going to translate this 2D medium into live action reference shoot, which would then have to go back into the 2D medium of painting. So we'd got to this point. We had filled up a quarter of our studio with 20 painting animators. We had raised, I think, around a third of the money. We were still a long way off being able to go ahead and know that we can make this film and finish this film. We made the decision to actually go and shoot a third of the film and to do the painting animation of a third of the film.
We decided to record one of our main characters, Pertangi, mainly because his role in the film wouldn't change, even if we were going to change other parts of the script later on. And because we needed to have some painted material to persuade people to join us and finance the film.
This was really a decision that would either make or break the production. We swam in a direction which could potentially not only bankrupt the company and destroy our reputations as filmmakers, but also make it unlikely that we'd make another film in the future. So
It was a tough decision to make. There weren't so many options then, and so we took the plunge and we decided to go ahead and do the Wrocław shoot.
Warta 5/4.
Wrocław was quite difficult for me. It was my first shoot on a big set, and it was a real learning experience and a very new situation. I was a first-time director on a Polish male-dominated set, and I think the crew was quite skeptical about how it would all turn out.
We always had that hanging over us, that we knew that we had taken a big risk in going ahead and making part of the film when, you know, we had no commitment of distribution, we had no commitment of funding that covered the entire budget.
The most attractive thing about this project is it's not a commercial project, it's not a big bucks project, it's not Harry Potter, it's not Disney film or whatever. It's an extraordinary labour of love about a great artist, and involves a lot of extraordinary artistry to make in every department of this film.
It was a big lesson in directing a production on this scale for me, but also for Hugh, who had joined me as co-director.
I think I kind of went from being a creative and at points controlling producer to an accidental director. Me joining Dorota as director just sort of organically flowed out of the experience of the production and of the writing of the script.
Z większą zajętliwością. Jeszcze raz! Czymkolwiek!
Definitely the hardest part was the Wrocław shoot. I think it was particularly hard because we were working out as we were going along how this type of filmmaking would actually be done. After all, we were doing something new, so we couldn't phone someone up who'd already done it and ask their advice. We couldn't read any how-to manuals. We just had to find out for ourselves. We had no proof that it would work out. We just had to trust our instincts and hope for the best.
It's trying something incredibly new and exciting by having moving images of the paintings of Van Gogh, and hopefully we will all be remembered for it.
So one of the scary things that came out of Wrocław first shoot was we realised that the actors, when they were acting out the parts, took almost twice as long as me and Dorota when we had acted out like all of the parts.
Listen, son, I'm afraid you'll never deliver that letter to Theo Van Gogh.
Frantically, in the space of 3 months, we had to cut over a quarter of the story from the script that we've been carefully working on over 3 years. And also we needed to recruit more painters.
You'll see that now we have another 15 PAVS units, and inside each one we have a painting animator doing their very first shot on Loving Vincent. Once we saw the material, once it had been painted, we got that whole enthusiasm back for the project. We realised we actually were doing something that was special. And we cut together this little trailer of material from that first shoot. And someone took this trailer that we did, they put it onto their Facebook page, and it went viral.
Loving Vincent.
Loving Vincent.
Oh, Entitled Loving Vincent.
Loving Vincent.
Loving Vincent.
Finally tonight, it's never been done before. A fully hand-painted feature film, now giving new life to Vincent van Gogh's works. The attention to detail so extraordinary, the finished product is turning into a masterpiece in its own right.
Within 24 hours, 2 million people had seen this. Within 3 months, 200 million people had viewed this. We went from a situation that seemed hopeless to a situation where it was like, we can go ahead and we can make this film. We didn't have enough time. but you know, at least we finally had a promise of resources to make the film.
Action!
Even though for most of my life I've been working with animation and painting, I always wanted and dreamed about working with actors. And suddenly when I found myself on that set, I realized how much I enjoy it.
For the London shoot, the biggest issue was time, really. Is that we were trying to shoot over 60 minutes of material with our main actors in the space of 11 days, doing up to 30 setups, which is a speed of shooting which maybe you get on soap operas.
The concept of this film was from the very beginning that it would be a story told by Vincent's paintings and the characters of his portraits. Therefore, I thought that it's important that these portraits, who were real humans before they were painted, should be portrayed by real humans now. Because they had real emotions. Emotions that the actors follow and show based on the script.
I knew that we were all going to be turned into sort of Van Gogh style paintings, but I didn't quite know how you guys were going to go about doing that. The concept was new and it was something that hadn't been done before. That's why I wanted to do it. That's why I wanted to do it with you guys. Is just I was really interested to see what the process was going to be.
You know, we're working to enormous green screens, the type that you usually don't see unless you're on a huge, you know, multi-million-dollar American movie.
Oh, the cornflower's lovely this time of year. It's really quite pretty, isn't it? Amazing, the scenery around here. And I just live down the road, round the corner, sort of back over there somewhere.
I knew very little about Van Gogh before starting this, only what I had learnt in school as a kid. I knew about his ear. I think that's probably the most famous thing. But I had absolutely no idea about him supposedly killing himself, or that there was ever any question around how exactly he died. And you know, it's been fascinating to explore that in the script and also to read different accounts from the different characters. It's been really interesting.
I always like when kind of the technical side of film meets the artistic side, so it's been a great experience and the cast have been amazing.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Sick! Ah!
You need that hot water.
You know that it's glued on!
You need that hot water.
If I had known about the beard, I would have run a mile.
What do I say when I find him? It's customary to start with "I'm sorry for your loss."
I play Armand Rouland, who is a young guy that Van Gogh painted because he was the son of one of Van Gogh's best friends. And throughout the film, he sort of has a self-discovery, which is sort of aided by his discovery of Van Gogh. To start with, it was completely the painting that captivated me because I didn't really know much about him other than he was this mad guy who cut off his ear and everyone thought he was a bit strange. But then, through this movie, I understood more about the man behind the paintings, and suddenly the paintings became so much more interesting. They just became alive for me. He's one of the first painters that really started painting with emotion.
Once we had finished with the actors, then it was all about painting. Every single frame of the film would need to be painted carefully in oil paints, mainly in Vincent's style. And his style is not easy to animate. The fact you can often see individual brushstrokes, the fact that he had such a thick impasto, meant that for a lot of shots the painters had to stop motion animate each individual brushstroke, move each individual brushstroke bit by bit across the canvas. It was my job to critically evaluate and eventually approve every single one of the 65,000 paintings.
I think by that time we'd only painted 15,000 frames of the film, so we had another 50,000 frames of the film to paint and not enough time to paint it in.
and not enough painters to paint it with.
We were still in the process of sorting out all the applications that had been coming through and trying to find the right painters.
We had a whole new recruitment drive. I mean, we had 4,000 new applications, and just the task of sifting through all of these applications to try and find people that we wanted.
We did tests on, I think, over 500 painters.
We were setting up a separate unit in Wrocław with 10 painters. We were setting up a unit in Athens, Studio Mabrida, that went up to 18 painters. But we also knew that we're going to need like 100 painters working on this film if we were going to stand a chance of getting it made before the deadline.
We now had 3 different studios in 2 countries, and our main studio, which at first had 20 painters, was now filled up with 67 painting animation workstations.
We were ready to go full steam ahead with the painting process to complete the film on time with our new larger team of painters. Okay, so let me take you through the animation process. First thing, we start with a clean canvas, open up the software and load up the references from the live action shoot. We take a keyframe for the scene, and based on that we paint the first frame and check it over with a supervisor. If the frame gets accepted, we can move on and we can begin animation. The projector displays the second frame of the shot, and then we have to scrape the paint off or change it a little bit and repaint the scene to match this new frame. Once this is done, we take another 2 pictures with the camera.
We are doing the film 12 frames per second, but we have to take 2 pictures to match the 24 frame standard for the film. After we've taken the picture, we project the next frame and start again.
I had to look after a group of painters and make sure that they were all sticking to the correct style and ensuring that every frame has the same standard of quality.
Some shots took a very long time to complete. I think my longest shot took me about 6 months to finish. Now imagine working every day here on one single shot, for it to then be on the screen for around 42 seconds.
Some of us definitely spend thousands of hours in a painting station. Half of our lives was there. So in a way, they became our little homes at work.
It was very clear that some painters became attached to their puffs and would decorate them and very often leave a mess in there too.
Sometimes we had to fix certain scenes. We would paint and animate just a part that needed fixing and sticking onto the original shot. We wanted to avoid throwing out whole shots, as it would be a huge waste of time.
It happened to me twice when I did a mistake during my painting animation and I have to redo 10 or 15 frames again. That was very painful.
There are very few scenes that they were thrown out after they were painted because they all took a very long time to paint.
Hear that, Enola? I better go talk to the lad.
I told you you're not going anywhere. You wanna talk? Talk in the shop.
The scenes that took the longest were the dynamic scenes, which had a lot of camera movement.
I painted descending through the starry night over the town. Because of moving camera, I often only managed a painting a day, mostly 1.5, on rare occasions 2. So it took me a long time to animate just a few seconds of the film.
You know, we were held back a little bit by what we could do. You know, the moving camera shots cost, and I'm the finance guy, so on the set I was like, Dorota, do we really need to have the moving camera shot here? But, you know, at the end of the day, it was a matter of, you know, the budget.
I think that we had the situation several times a year where we really didn't know where the next money was going to come from. It was brilliant, you know, working with Sean because Sean had this ability to pull rabbits out of the hat. There was this month where Sean was like, I have no more rabbits. And really, the only option I could see was getting on a plane and to America and going and talking to one of our largest investors and saying to them is we'd like you to increase your investment by 50% and we'd like you to put it in the next 2 weeks. And thankfully, they were yet again very supportive and came through to us, and that kept the whole thing moving forward for more months until we wrapped up all the legal work, all the bank documents that finally got the final monies flowing through to us. And then it was all about pushing to get more painting done week by week. That was putting a lot of pressure on us, and that kind of increased when I had to go to Britain to do the sound and the music, and left Dorota on her own in Poland to continue supervising the production.
That was very disappointing for me. I had written every draft of the script to Clint Mansell's music. For me, he was the only composer for Loving Vincent. I had my heart set on him. He was a hero and an inspiration to me, so to have missed the recording and mixing was really heartbreaking. But there was no choice, because at that point in the production, we were at our most intensive stage.
We had people working 5, 6, 7 days a week. It was really up to the painters how much they painted per week, and the more they painted, the more they got paid. And obviously we had a vested interest in trying to keep them there as long as possible. And one of the things that we would do that later became a tradition is that one of us would cook for the entire crew, and we'd post what we were cooking on a Friday night and hope the painters would be streaming into the studios on the Saturday. We also provided breakfast in the morning to try and get painters to start work earlier, but some painters always preferred to work during the nights.
Like Vincent, I liked the nighttime, which was very useful, as each night I had to do scheduling for the next day, because in the daytime there was too many approvals to do. Deciding which animator did which shot was incredibly important to the quality of the film. The studio was different by night, much calmer, and there were a few painters who were also night owls, so I could take a break and review the work and discuss those shots in a more in-depth way. But even with the long days, we knew that we weren't going to meet our September deadline, and a lot of our painters who had arranged their return home were starting to leave.
The pressure just went up increasingly, every week.
Because on one hand, we were still working very hard and very intense. The deadline was so close. And on the other hand, there were these people leaving every day and every week.
We would have a farewell party at least once a week where we had some cake and beer. And after we all said goodbye, the rest of the crew went back to work.
The studios in Wrocław and Athens finished their animation by the end of October. In Gdańsk, we were still painting the front titles and doing some corrections. But by November 21st, the painting process stopped.
Okay, I think that's it then, guys. Gotcha? Yay! Okay, champagne.
By November 30th, we dismantled all the painting stations, and it was time to move after 4 memorable years.
2 years and 50 weeks ago, I stood here in the snow giving the first Kickstarter update. In this studio over here, which is now a warehouse, we dreamed, devised, planned, produced, designed, and most importantly painted the Loving Vincent film.
Our life was revolving for 5 years around loving Vincent, and we were expecting that we're gonna have this incredible sense of relief and achievement after we finish. But it was quite different actually, because we finished in March and we had to wait till the world premiere. That was planned for June in Annecy. So yeah, these 3 months were really difficult. I remember them as a very dark period of my life, because it was filled with the sense of dread and anxiety and expectations building up in my head. And it was also very cold. I remember snowing on a May Day. And I just remember that I felt burnt out. I felt physically and mentally really in a bad way, I think. And I just really wanted finally to share this film. So I had to introduce the film, and after I did that, which was an incredibly emotional moment for me, I had to go and sit in the audience and be part of the audience and watch the film with them. I was terrified and I had no idea what to expect, and I knew that I have to share this film with the audience and they will react, and I had no idea how. Remember that moment, that time extremely vividly. The film comes to the end, the end credits starts to roll, and the audience starts applauding. But then that applause is like transforming into bigger applause. And then that bigger applause is transforming into standing ovation that lasts 12 minutes.
There was just this incredible relief when we had that standing ovation at the end of the film.
And that was a moment in my life when it just, it all sort of washed away. The stress of the previous 5 years. Just realizing that, we had done something that people appreciated.
Whatever happened after that, whether it was successful in other countries or other festivals, we knew that there was this kind of appreciation for the film there. And I think that was a real turning point, and things moved very fast after that. The day after Annecy, we went straight out to Shanghai.
We said yes to every opportunity to promote the film. We said yes to every interview, every screening with Q&A, and all the promotional action.
We barely went home. I mean, we had 90 flights in 10 months. So, we're having 9 or 10 flights a month to try and be there for all the premieres and to just do as much press as possible, because, we didn't want to take anything for granted, and we'd spent 7 years or more even making the film. And so we wanted to do everything possible to make it successful.
It really is touching to see that, to know that you actually made a film that can make people cry, that can inspire people, and I think that's for me the biggest success of the release.
The reception of the audience, and it wasn't just in the cinemas, it was also at the festivals. I mean, we got 16. I think now we've actually, because we've got another couple over the past month, I think we've got 18 audience awards, and those awards voted for by the audiences, and in a way they're like the best awards, because it's the people going out there bothering to attend the festivals and bothering to vote and backing you for what you've done.
In China, in the US, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in virtually every country we visited, we had these people coming up to us with tears and that wanted to share their love and wanted to come up to us and hug us. I wish that Vincent could have had some of these kind words, these good emotions, these hugs that I have received, because I believe that this could keep him going and keep him alive for more years and keep him dreaming and creating.
The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences invite you to be its guest at the 37th Annual Awards Presentation.
The film had done really well at festivals, really well in the cinemas. Financially, it had been a success, yet somehow we were still viewed as outsiders within the film industry. And the biggest stamp of legitimacy that you can get in the film industry is an Oscar nomination. We were all racked with nerves in the days leading up to the announcement of the Oscars 2018.
For Best Animated Feature Film, The Boss Baby.
Boss Baby?
The Breadwinner. Coco. Ferdinand. And Loving Vincent.
Now I understand what you tried to say to me, how you suffered for your sanity, how you tried to set them free. They would not listen, they did not know how. Perhaps they'll listen now.
For they could not love you, but still your love was true. And when no hope was left inside on that starry, starry night, you took your life as lovers often do. But I could have told you, Vincent, this world was never meant for one as beautiful as you. Starry, starry night, portraits hung in empty halls, frameless heads on nameless walls, with eyes that watch the world and can't forget, like the strangers that you've met, the ragged men in ragged clothes, a silver thorn, a bloody rose, lie crushed and broken on the virgin snow. Now I think I know what you tried to say to me, and how you suffered for your sanity, and how you tried to set them free. They would not listen, they're not listening still. Perhaps they never will.
Whoa! Rock it! Monica! Yeah.